Back to the Mintner method. I'm your host, Andrew Mintner, and on today's video, we are going to do a subscriber suggestion, and it's going to be a game that I wasn't going to cover this week, but I did have them on the radar for a new angle that I'm looking at, and that is going to be Jacksonville State versus Kennesaw State. Now, I know this is an extremely off-the-wall, obscure game that you probably would not be watching if it was not during the week, like, Thursday, Friday game. But the thing is, because of that, that provides us with a lot of value. Now, as you know, if you have watched any of the videos this season, especially of the last couple weeks, I am tracking early down success, early down EPA on first and second downs. So elite teams top 15 in offense or top 15 in defense have been absolutely crushing against the spread. And I wanted to look at the other side of the spectrum, teams that are horrendous, bottom 15 offensively or bottom 15 defensively in early down EPA. And so to my surprise, when I looked and did the against the spread data, overall for the teams that are ranking right now, those teams have went 28-55 against the spread. So if you were to flip that and fade them, 55-28, even better than going the elite side. Now, I don't want to just sit here and be like, oh, well, now we're switching the whole, angle, but we are going to dive into some of those teams because I think it is, worth looking at. And so the games look a little uglier and they look a little, less appealing. But from the betting perspective, we don't really care about that. The games can be as ugly as all get out as long as we win. So last week, these teams went 9-13 against the spread. So if you would have faded them, 13-9, very solid week. We're looking, as if most of you know, if you're a straight bettor, which you should be, parlays obviously, even though they are fun, are not profitable long term, no matter what you think, especially if you're tracking your results and actually being honest with yourself and being accountable. So basically, we're going to dive in right here. Jacksonville State opened as a 14.5 favorite. They have ballooned up to 16.5. Still within the realm of possibility of covering, obviously. And we're going to dive into a couple things here. So Jacksonville State, if you are familiar with Rich Rodriguez as the head coach, he was formerly Arizona and a couple other places, Michigan, obviously. He likes to weaponize pace, and this normally works against inferior opponents. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. So on early downs offensively, Jacksonville State is actually very, very solid. They are 31st in pass EPA and 47th in rush EPA. That gives them the 35th overall ranking. And they get just a glorious matchup against Kennesaw State, who is arguably the worst team in college football. I mean, you just gotta kind of, call a spade here. So they're 120th in overall early downs EPA on defense, and they're 134th, which is absolutely dead last on offense. So to put that in perspective, even though Jacksonville State's defense is not phenomenal, this is not the type of offense, obviously, as it is the absolute worst, that would probably be able to take advantage of, the weakness that is Jacksonville State. So now when we look at the advanced statistics here, Jacksonville State, as I had said in the Rich Rod piece, they are explosive. So, you have to kind of understand that. They do have big plays, and, they're going to have some red in here from an efficiency standpoint. But when you look from a passing standpoint, 28th overall in predicted points per attempt, 8th in passing explosiveness, they're going to have their advantages offensively. I mean, there is some, strengths for Kennesaw State that kind of, stand out to me, but I don't want to say they're anomalies, because I like to like give credit where credit is due. Uh, but I don't think it's enough. Defensive stuff rate, defensive line yards, that's great. I don't think that's going to be enough against this offense that is going to go at a breakneck pace and is going to be just all out all game essentially. And again, when we come over to the offensive side of the ball, Kennesaw State 134th in overall efficiency. They are explosive, which that happens sometimes. Sometimes you have very inefficient teams that will break off big plays. That's just how it works. One of the absolute worst offensive lines that can be shown on different levels, whether it's the stuff rate. 31.7% of the time they're being tackled at or behind the line of scrimmage on a rush. That is abysmal, to put it kindly. 131st in rushing efficiency, 125th in passing efficiency. It's kind of a cut and dry feel here. Jacksonville State, when we look at our overall schedule here, they're kind of a pretty straightforward team, right? When they play teams that are better than them or on the same level, it's going to be tough, right? Coastal Carolina, Louisville. I mean, Eastern Michigan is not terrible. They're okay. But then they play someone like Southern Miss, dominate, right? Just complete domination. And I know they don't need an extra week to prepare for Kennesaw State. Like, let's be real here. But that does help, And then when we look at Kennesaw State, like there's just a lot. This is their first year in FBS. So, there is going to be some growing pains. I mean, that is something that you have to acknowledge. But these growing pains are very alarming. To lose to Tennessee Martin by 11 at home is not good. There's just no way to cut that. That is a terrible loss. Obviously, the other losses, there's nothing wrong with them. Louisiana Lafayette is actually very good. San Jose State, very solid. Tennessee Martin, not. So the way I'm kind of seeing this playing out is Arizona. Jacksonville State will more than likely score on pretty much, I would say probably 80% of their possessions. So they're going to get 10 to 12 possessions. They're probably going to score 8 or 9 times. I don't see any realm of possibility where they are going to be in a very tough environment, like they're going to be kicking a ton of field goals, right? The total is only 48.5, which, you would think should be a little bit higher, being that Jacksonville State is a high favorite, 16.5. But that's probably more of an indication of how bad the Kennesaw State offense is. And so, Jacksonville State could just dominate and, the score would be like 35-3 and they just don't get there, So, but the way I see it is they're going to weaponize their pace and they're just, in general, better overall. That's nothing to say against Kennesaw State that they're not going to do better next year or later in the year as they develop, but this is not like the James Madison move up to FBS. That's not this. This is not that. They are going to struggle. They will probably be better next year, but they are not going to be better in this matchup. And so 16.5 is a lot to lay. Obviously, a lot of people don't like to lay points. They like to take underdogs. They like big payouts, things like that. But when you have to look at it from a logical standpoint, Kennesaw State is bottom 15 in both early down offense and early down defense. So they're behind the chains at every single turn. That on top of like just general, inefficiency, regardless of what the down and distance is, 16.5 points can dissipate very quickly. You could look up, it could be the end of the first quarter, it could be 21-0. And if you're holding plus 16.5, you're going to be like trying to mentally gymnastics your way to a cover because it probably ain't going to happen. So now this is a pretty short video. I think it's pretty straightforward. With some of these matchups that I'm going to look at in the bottom 15, as you can see, I have my tab here. They're not going to be as in depth as when I'm looking at more game of the week style games or things of that nature, right? It's pretty straightforward and to the point. We're making a case normally for the favorites in those games because they're playing just abysmal teams, and I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, well, there's value in taking like 20 plus 24 or something like that. There's not. Obviously the lines makers have made a distinct stand on this team is infinitely better. So like you can either, lay them or you can just stay away from the game. And that's kind of my point when it comes to larger spreads and things like that. There's not a lot to break down in those games. But the overall consensus is you're either going to take the favorite or you're just going to be like, I'm not going to bet that game. And that's a good rule of thumb. That's the rule of thumb I abide by. So that's going to be it for this video. As always, if you like the content, please subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, share it with a friend or a loved one or someone you think would be interested in it. And I try to get to all the comments. Obviously, this is an extremely small channel. We just started out, not even like a month ago. So I really appreciate it. It means a lot. I do this in my spare time, and I have a passion for it. So, but other than that, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.